Right, guys, welcome to the Lean Lifestyle. My name is Ricky Brody, and today I just want to talk a little bit about, off-plan meals or social events or just eating out in general. Everyone's got a life, well, should have. And when it comes to, just even things like eating takeaways or just kind of having a bit more relaxed weekend or anything like that, I understand it can be quite stressful for people. There's a few things that I kind of implement, and obviously working with clients help them work around this sort of things, because at the end of the day the approaches can suit different people, so it's not like one size fits all. So I'm going to go over a few aspects that could potentially benefit you with this. Hopefully it can help you. So first off, it's really important to understand that having that kind of social side of things is very important. It can massively help reduce with your stress levels, and it kind of gives you a bit more of a confidence side of things, where you know that once you achieve your results, it's not like you can't ever have a life. There's obviously phases that you go through where having an off-plan meal is not the most ideal thing, but at the end of the day, if you can kind of find that balance, you'll feel a lot more comfortable and confident within it becoming more of a lifestyle, and you learn to implement it within just your day-to-day life or monthly things. So that, say, you've got a holiday coming up, or you've got family things going on week after week, certain periods of the year where everyone's very sociable through summer and stuff like that, it can be quite difficult. And more often than not, people just tend to sort of completely go off plan, or they don't want to do social things. And I feel like that's a bit of a shame. Like, you should never really not do a social thing just because of your diet, unless you are training to compete or you've got a photo shoot. But even then, there are certain chances that you can do this sort of stuff. The first thing that I'd like to talk about is reducing your calories or increasing your output. I understand for most people this seems like very much common sense. I feel like a lot of people tend to go really extreme and they don't actually pay much attention. They don't plan ahead. And what I mean by this is, in one of my recent videos, I spoke about calorie cycling, and you can implement this on weeks where you have a social event. So if your weekly average is like 2,000 calories, then you could take 200 calories away from 5 days, have 1,800 on them calories, and then have 3,000 calories on the Saturday, for example. So this gives you the ability to still maintain that consistency throughout the week with regards to your calorie deficit, but also gives you the option to kind of eat a little bit more on that day. Now, you're still probably going to gain weight, but there's a good chance that you'll lose weight on the 1,800 calories. But do go back to eating 2,000 calories, because if you're consistently losing weight, it can really help you to be making sure that you're fueling your body properly and eating enough food. The other option is obviously increasing the output. Now, once again, I feel like this is something that people go a little bit too crazy on. You can quite literally just increase your daily steps by like 2,500, or even look to do an extra 5 to 10 minutes cardio on top of what you're currently doing. There's no need to be like absolutely smashing Stairmaster for 40 minutes a day when you've been doing 20 minutes cardio on the treadmill. Also, the following day, you don't need to be doing anything crazy, because I know a lot of people who have an off-plan meal, they then the following day they decide that they're going to go do a 10K run, which they haven't been doing, and then they end up absolutely shattered. This can often lead to someone actually overeating on the following day. So just get back to plan, move on with things. Use the system that you've put in place. If it means that you've increased your steps and you've done it for 5 to 6 days leading up to it, and then you plan on doing it 3 days after, use that as a tool. Do it that way. Another good thing that you can use is what I call like protein fasting. Sort of contradicts itself a little bit there, because obviously you're eating, so you're not technically fasting. So, but it's kind of an easy concept to implement, and using that term, I think, kind of makes a bit of sense. So what you basically do is you just have high protein meals. So, if you get up first thing in the morning, obviously there's going to be some sort of carbs or fats involved, like if you do have eggs or something, it's very likely that's going to happen. But the benefits of this is that you're going to be getting your protein in throughout the day. You're going to be eating throughout the day, which means it's less likely that when it comes to having that off-plan meal, that you're actually going to want to overeat, because you've at least been eating throughout the day. Whereas if you just fast, most people get a massive increase in appetite, get lethargic, and they don't quite enjoy the social event. So it's really important to understand that you need to use your tools wisely. So if you're someone who just really can't get on with eating just protein throughout the day, then it's probably not the best option for you, but it is a good option for those that are pretty comfortable doing that. and want to have extra calories for the evening. So you implement calorie cycling, you've got 3,000 calories on a Saturday and you only eat 1,000 calories between the morning and the meal, then you've got 2,000 calories to kind of play with. But you also need to take into consideration that probably going to be over if you went, like, say you looked on the menu and it's got 2,000 calories on there as an example, there's a good chance that could be 2,500 calories. It's not that accurate. So you need to take that into consideration, that just because you've got 2,000 calories, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a free for all. Another thing that I like to implement, which is something I do personally quite frequently, is eating meals that resemble your current program. So quite often I give clients options like, sweet potato fries with chicken, fajita chicken, or something like that in the evening. Now, if you go to a restaurant or something, it's quite likely that you're going to have the option to have something like sweet potato fries and chicken. You have to take into consideration that the sweet potato fries are most likely going to be higher in fat than the ones that you usually have at home. So it's not a straight swap, but it's a good way to choose and limit your options to a certain extent, which can be quite beneficial when you are having frequent social events. Another great thing, which is something that I have myself, is something like steak and potatoes. I don't have chips. I tend to go for potatoes instead. For me, I enjoy the meal. I still have sauce and stuff on it, like the peppercorn sauce I usually have or something. And then I have potatoes rather than chips. And it's very filling because potato is a pretty low calorie carbohydrate compared to the volume. So I get pretty full off of that. Steak itself, being high fat, high protein, quite difficult to sort of digest in general. It takes a lot of chewing. It depends how you have it cooked, but that can obviously help because then you've got some sort of comparison to go off of, and it's fairly consistent with what you're already doing. So that means that you're still staying in a fairly consistent routine, and most places do allow for this. Chicken, potato mash, steak, chips, like you can have these things. You just have to make sure that you're being aware of what you're having, and planning in advance can be very beneficial with this. And like I say, whenever I look at a menu, depending on sort of like where I'm at or what I'm trying to achieve, or whether I'm just, I've got too many social events back to back, I know where I'm going. I go straight to the grill section, look there. I don't look at anything else. And then I look at the sides, see that they do potatoes, perfect. Get some veg with that as well. Nice meal, nice and full, still enjoying the social event. No one's looking at me because I've ordered chicken salad and I actually enjoy it, and it doesn't have that much of an effect on me at all. Another thing is planning ahead. Now, I completely get that this isn't the most ideal situation for most people, but it can be very helpful just to take a look at the menu before you go there, rather than, like I say, like I go straight to the grill section. But if you scan through everything, it's quite likely you're going to pick something that could be quite calorie dense or something that you might not necessarily usually have. So, if you decide to have a chicken burger or a normal burger, like that's fine, but have a little look at the menu beforehand. So it just takes away the sort of willpower side of things when it comes to what should I pick off of this menu. You've already looked at it, you've looked at it away from being there, so you don't make any like snap reactions, which is something that I've done plenty of times where I'm eating out and all of a sudden I completely change what I'm doing. So looking at a menu beforehand can be very helpful. It's something that I do quite a lot, depending on where we go. Most places, you go to places in your local area, you kind of know what they have. First off, I always like to look at the menu anyway before we go to a restaurant, just so that I know what I'm eating, not even from a calorie perspective, just so that I know there's something that I can eat. And then obviously you can get a bit of an idea of what's on the menu, what you can have, what you'd like to have as well. Because sometimes, like I say, you can go there, you can kind of limit yourself to a point, but there could be other options on the menu that you would enjoy a little bit more that are not so bad, or something that you can kind of gauge how many calories you're having. So it just gives you a bit more control and a bit more of an like idea of what you're going to eat when you get there. And I feel like once you kind of get that side of things, it's very easy to enjoy social things whilst eating out and continuously progressing, not having to kind of sit there and think to yourself, I'm going to get a like I've been here before. Like I've been there before where I've got things like chicken salad when I'm out and all my mates are eating burgers and chips and stuff, and I'm like not enjoying the salad. Like I keep saying, oh, yeah, it's lovely, but I'm not enjoying it. So it's really important to have that balance, because like I say, it's not enjoyable. Like it's actually more stressful eating something like that and not having options and not like feeling comfortable doing it. And the crazy thing is that when I've gone to restaurants and I've had things like, a chicken Caesar salad, it's packed full of croutons, which are basically bread soaked in fat, like oil. So it's very frequent that actually you might not make the best option, although it might come across as if it's a lower calorie option. If you actually look at it, it's not. So being aware of that kind of stuff can massively help. And another thing that I use pretty much every single time is sort of like a 2 out of 3 approach. So obviously you've got three things. You've got your starters, main, and dessert. So for me, I go for 2 options. So you can either have starters and main, or main and dessert, rather than having a starters and main and then thinking, oh, I might have a dessert. If you fancy having a dessert, then look at having a main and a dessert and not having a starters. Now look, this isn't going to massively change the game for you, but it can help just control your calories a little bit more. And also making sure that you're not overeating just because you're in that environment, because sometimes that could be the thing where it's like, oh, I'm here, so I'm just going to eat too much anyway. If you're used to eating quite frequently, then you tend to end up having a 3 course meal can actually be sometimes uncomfortable. So for me, that sort of approach works really well. Personally, I much prefer starters and main. I'm more of a savory person than sweet, so I'd rather have something that I enjoy at the start and then a main, and then not push for dessert, because most of the time I find, unless you're in a proper dessert place, it's not that good anyway. So this is something that can obviously help you understand what you enjoy, what works best for you. If you've got a sweet tooth, main, and knowing that you're having a dessert is going to massively improve your experience whilst you're there, because at the end of the day, it should be enjoyable. We eat out for the enjoyment factor, for the social thing. Food can be enjoyable and you don't want it to be stressful. A few things I would avoid when you're eating out, one of them being fasting. Now, unless you have been fasting frequently, or you can fast, or you are good with fasting, if you're going out for like a lunch or something, it can be helpful. But if you're fasting right up until dinner, very likely that you're going to go into that situation with a very high appetite, very lethargic as well. You're probably going to be quite tired, which means you're not actually going to enjoy the social event until you start eating. And then obviously that means that you're probably going to be miserable and not quite make the best options as well. And you can still overeat with this. So I've tried this, I've tried fasting before, and that was the experience that I had on several occasions. And working with clients, we've tried different options, and I've also got very similar feedback from clients as well. And that's without prompting them beforehand. It was more of a, right, well, let's try fasting. What was your feedback? Yeah, it was all right. And I said, oh, did you experience this, being quite lethargic? Yep. Was you looking forward to the social event? Not so much, because I was tired. So I asked these questions to get the answers that I pretty much know that are going to happen. But some people do work well with it, and I've had clients that it doesn't affect. So it is one of them things where you kind of have to gauge what works best for you. High calorie alcohol is also one of the things that I would avoid. This is being things like cider. Like ciders are pretty high in calories. Like you get like 400 calories in a cider. Same with like a pint of beer. What I tend to go for are more like bottles of beer. So you could get like a Corona or something that's like 150 calories. Or if you like vodka, Diet Coke, like some sort of spirit, they tend to be lower calorie. And it means that you can still enjoy having some alcohol with your friends. You can still have some sort of balance within your lifestyle, but you're managing your calories without that sort of pointing the finger thing where it's like, why are you drinking water? Why are you eating chicken salad? Which I've been there. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, it's at the point now in my life, I go out with my friends and I make them options. They don't even question it anymore. But that's after years of being, oh, here we go. So I understand where people are coming from with this. And this is why I'm putting this out there, because it can help people get a bit of an understanding of how they can still incorporate balance into their lifestyle whilst progressing and actually being able to achieve results. And yeah, you might have some setbacks. You learn from them. That's the whole point. It's not being perfect every single week. These sort of things are designed for you to get feedback from yourself, and then you understand what works good for me and what doesn't. Some people just like to go and have a higher calorie day. If that's the case, absolutely fine, as long as you can stay in control of it. But also don't think that if you have a high calorie day, it doesn't mean all your progress is ruined. Like if you get straight back on the wagon, get on with it, get back to it, the weight will come off. It's just going to set you back a little bit. So if you're okay with that, then that's perfect. Like do it. Like don't be afraid to do it. Understand other options that could be there for you. Like if you do have several social events back to back, it does help to put things in place, because otherwise you're going to go a whole month without progressing, and that can be quite disheartening. And this is one of the things that I've experienced myself, and I've helped clients work around, to the point now where most of my clients are pretty competent and they actually manage that stuff by themselves quite easily. But they also inform me of what they're going to do, what approach they're taking. I think that that's the biggest part of it. Is a lot of this stems from not really my own experience. Like, so my own experience is what has allowed me to help my clients, but it's my clients' experiences that's allowing me to put this out, because it confirms what I've been saying and what I've been doing, because their feedback is so important for my development and knowing what works for other people, because it's easy to say what works for me, and it's easy for me to lie to myself as well. So it's also easy for clients to lie to me, I suppose. But what I find is that a lot of people do tend to benefit from this stuff. Another big thing is weigh in after. Like, don't be afraid to step on the scales. Step on the scales. Right, I've put on 3 pounds. Great. Let's see what happens over the next few days. Oh, I've dropped 2 pounds in a day. Right. Oh, I'm back down to where I was on Friday, and it's Monday now. Do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people, they will go out on Friday or Saturday, and actually, if they get back at it, they tend to get back down to the weight they was a few days ago anyway. So it's actually not done really that much damage. But people avoid the scales. They don't like the accountability, and actually then tend to sort of go off of plan because they haven't stepped on there and held themselves accountable. And that is not always the case. It's how I view it for myself. My view of the reason why I do it is for that accountability side of things, because I think to myself, right, step on the scales, I'm up 3-4 pounds. Let's see how long it takes. I'm not going to do anything drastic. I'm going to stick to my program. I'm going to stay consistent with my food, which I do anyway, and I'm just going to see what happens. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't even take that long to come off, because I've controlled it. I've still enjoyed the social side of things. I might have had a burger, I might have had chips, I might have had chicken, I might have had mash. It doesn't really matter. Most of the time, if I have like steak and potatoes and the starters, barely any difference. The main thing is knowing that accountability side of things, weighing in, controlling these variables, learning what can work for you, can massively help you not just achieve your results, but also maintain them. And I think that is probably one of the biggest parts of this whole thing. The reason why I put out this content, the reason why I created, the lean lifestyle, is because it's something that I have learned over 10 plus years of training, trial and error, constantly working on these things. And now finally developed the understanding and the ability to use different principles and different tools and get that feedback from myself to know what works for me. I know what type of event I'm going into. If it's a quick, should we go out for a Nando's with my mates? I ain't stressing about it. I ain't going, no, because I'm focusing on losing body fat. When I was doing my photo shoot a few years, I think it's probably about 2 years ago, I get lost because of the whole pandemic situation. But but when I was doing my photo shoot a couple of years ago, I told my client who competed recently, and I was telling her, I was like, look, when I I was eating pizza like every week just because I wanted to try something. And look, I got in incredible shape, but me eating pizza every week was not ideal. Like, I could have been a lot leaner if I wasn't. But what I did was I tried this for myself. I put myself in a position where I wanted to learn and understand what actually happens. And the reason why I did that whilst going into a photo shoot was because I knew I had something, I had a goal set, and I was holding myself accountable. Whereas if I just did it willy-nilly, I wouldn't actually revert back to the sort of approach that I was taking. And the way that I was doing it was I was having this really high calorie day and then a lot of low calorie days and doing quite a bit of cardio. Learned a lot from it, and I tested myself. And that was what it was for. It wasn't so that I could say, like, oh, look, I'm eating pizza. No, I haven't really put this out like I've been eating pizza the whole time, but I literally had pizza pretty much every single week. It was quite fun. It was, it wasn't easy. It was very difficult to do this, and it's not something I would recommend. But doing it allowed me to understand the feedback, what it felt like, how I could work around it, and how I could still get into shape if I needed. So now, like, if I've got 4 or 5 social events back to back, I don't stress about it because I put myself in the deep end. I had a photo shoot, so I had to progress, and I made sure I did it. And what that does now is it makes it easy for me when it comes to just normal stuff, in the sense of, I'm going out for a meal, like bank holiday, went out with the family, went to a pub, had some food. I think I actually had chicken and potatoes, to be fair, that time. It was decent chicken and potatoes, and I had starters. Years ago, I've been like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to eat, calories, stuff like this. And that's why I'm putting this out there, to give you that guidance, to get that understanding that it is possible. You just need to control the variables. And as soon as you learn how to do it, it becomes quite natural. So I hope this helps. If it does, let me know. Drop me a message if you've got any questions or anything. Leave comments or whatever you want to do. And like I say, don't stress about it. Learn to develop the ability to control these variables, and you'll have a much more enjoyable process.